Welcome, everyone. I wanted to share with you some thoughts that I have had this week on communicating with students online. The subtitle indicates some of what we're going to be touching on: ambiguity, tone, and the construction of relationships in fraternal humanism. So let's go to the faith to begin and get some insight and wisdom from there. I loved the gospel from last Sunday, the solemnity of the Most Holy Trinity. The Trinity itself, the mystery of the Trinity, it seems to me, points to the eternity of relationships. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. The mystery of three persons in one God. But I think it matters because this mystery of our faith points to the importance, the eternal importance of getting relationships right, especially in online education. So let me just scroll down and share with you the quote. I really like this quote. This is from John's Gospel, chapter 3. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. Whoever believes in him will not be condemned. It sets up, in my mind, the idea that with such an outpouring of divine love, condemnation really doesn't have a place. And I know nobody, or very few of us would embrace condemnation as a pedagogical tool, but sometimes we have a tendency to not mind our language. It seems to me that's true of me. I'll use myself as an example. But I wanted to just point out the sort of the pairing of two words that can help shed light, it seems to me, on God's unwillingness to condemn the world, and we should take that to heart, I guess. Online educators are often asked to make judgments about the quality of student work and the degree to which they know and can do what we hope they know and can do, what we plan for them anyway. But that word judgmental as an adjective, having or displaying an excessively critical point of view, we want to avoid that. I don't like to sound judgmental, but it was a big mistake. As opposed to another word of nurturing. This seems to me to really go to that St. John's Gospel from last Sunday. Nurturing, referring to care for and encourage the growth or development of, help or encourage the development of. Cherish. It's a good word too. So it seems to me we want to avoid in our communications with students being judgmental and always looking for opportunities to be nurturing. Sometimes I'd hear colleagues say, in reflecting over the course of my teaching career, I hear phrases like, these kids can't write, these kids are not working, or these students are sneaky. All right, a little bit of that going on, but I think a better way would be to look for ways in which John is trying to figure out course expectations, where Sarah is making progress in writing, where Santiago is a gift. Those are opportunities to think about rather than group kind of condemnation, but featuring the personhood of the learners in our course. I think one way to address the question there is to recognize the primacy of building an inclusive learning community, one teacher and student interaction at a time. From tiny affirmative interactions, mighty learning communities grow. It also seems to me that each communication that we have in the online context is a contact opportunity with at least two layers of meaning. There's the matter at hand. For example, let's say a student contacts you with some help seeking clarification on an assignment or a due date or what have you. And then, so there's that, the immediate details of the communication. But then there's the opportunity to convey timeless truths, I guess, that speak to community. So, also important to keep in mind as this Chronicle of Higher Education on another related idea of student engagement online. When I read this, I realized that it's really important that paragraphs start with a good opening. Your welcome to the course announcement is probably the most important of the course, as it gives students an immediate sense of you, your enthusiasm, your approach, inviting or intimidating, your attitude, upbeat or uninterested, and your willingness to help them. Unlike in face-to-face courses in which your opening words are spoken then quickly forgotten, in an online environment, they are available to your students throughout the course 24/7. The students will return to your announcement again and again, so make sure, as you would for any of your posts or emails to follow, that it is clear, concise, well written, free of typos. You're setting the scene and the standards. That's true. And again, I would add to that things to keep in mind is that, again, it's an opportunity to build that learning community. So with that lasting, the words of welcome, like the Chronicle of Higher Education article just mentioned, they tend to linger. Our words tend to linger longer online than they do, let's say, in a brick and mortar or face-to-face context. So I think it's important to keep in mind to treat each email, assignment instructions, and synchronous meeting as an opportunity to affirm what I discovered in this blog post, and which led me to read a wonderful document, which I'm going to share in a sec. But the opportunity to affirm what the Congregation of Catholic Education calls us to do in its educating for fraternal humanism, namely to build a culture of dialogue. So let's take a look at that. This was a blog post from a couple of years ago, and this is where I saw the link from this blog, and that quote just stood out to me, and I clicked on this link to read the document. Educating to fraternal humanism challenges Catholic schools to move beyond the simple instrumental view that education is self-serving, and instead should serve the common good of the entire world. Wow, that's a tall order. So the purpose is no longer just to help students get into selective universities, for example, but it's a lot more ambitious than that. And here's the two quotes from the document, Educating to Fraternal Humanism, that I found quite inspiring. So here's the document at the Vatican website, Educating to Fraternal Humanism. Paragraphs 12 and 15 are what I wanted to share with you. So a culture of dialogue does not simply suggest an exchange of views to know one another so as to mitigate the alienating effect of the encounter between citizens of different cultures. True dialogue takes place within an ethical framework of requirements and attitudes for formation, as well as social objectives. The ethical requirements for dialogue are freedom and equality. The participants in the dialogue must be free from their contingent interests and must be prepared to recognize the dignity of all parties. These attitudes are supported by the consistency with one's own specific universe of values. This results in the general intention to match actions with words. In other words, to link the ethical principles we proclaim, for example, peace, fairness, respect, democracy, etc., with social and civic choices. It is a grammar of dialogue, as pointed out by Pope Francis, able to build bridges and to find answers to the challenges of our time. Powerful stuff. And then the paragraph 15, the nature of education lies precisely being able to lay the foundations for peaceful dialogue and allow the encounter between differences with the primary objective of building a better world. It is, first and foremost, an educational process where the search for a peaceful and enriching coexistence is rooted in the broader concept of the human being, in his or her psychological, cultural, and spiritual aspects, free from any form of egocentrism or ethnocentrism, but rather in accordance with a notion of integral and transcendent development both of the person and of society. It reminds me of that Sunday gospel message about not condemning the outpouring of divine love, and just the eternity of relationships as exemplified in the most Holy Trinity. Finally, let's consider the question, how does tone convey this culture of dialogue? First of all, I was wondering in getting ready for this, is there such a thing as tone in online communications? And I think after some thought, yes, there definitely is. But let's take a look at a quick 1-minute reminder of the role that tone can play in communication generally.
Welcome to another Rapid Results Rapid Refresher. This topic, your tone of voice. The way we say something, known as the tone, can have a bigger impact than the words we choose to say. The tone determines the emphasis of the words. For example, the question, "Who did this?" can dramatically change the reaction of others depending on the way we say it. Compare these two terms. "Who did this?" and "Who did this?" People react differently to the way the tone is applied. So ensure that when speaking, you help the person you're speaking with by using the correct tone to support the words you use. And remember the key points of using your tone of voice. The tone has a greater impact than words. People's reactions are determined a lot by your tone, and you control the tone.
In seeing that little video again, I'm not sure that tone trumps words, because I think in the online context, like we've looked at, the selection and the word choice matters a great deal. Just a couple of other points from the Chronicle of Higher Education article about things to bear in mind. That rapid turnaround is really important. So in communicating with students online, the sooner the better, I think. But at the latest, 24-hour turnaround, that seems to be very, very important. You must constantly maintain that all-important umbilical cord that connects you to students. When you fail to feed the beast, offering your thoughts, reactions, and instructions online, students are wont to lose interest. One component of that is making sure you respond quickly to any student posts that shout "help" or "I'm confused," or "I just wanted to share this with you, Professor." Those students are reaching out to you, and your quick response tells them that you are interested in what they have to say, that you are active in the course, and that they can depend on you. 3 qualities that go a long way to keeping students engaged. And finally, opportunity to be positive. Be detailed and positive in your comments on their work. Even when students do poorly, they will benefit and be motivated to try harder next time if your explanations for their poor grades are detailed and encouraging. And this is another quote from an online learning consortium, and they point out something that I think is very important, that is important to feature. Computer-mediated communication is a burgeoning field of study. As communication becomes more and more mediated via a keyboard or computer screen, researchers are discovering the importance of tone in how we communicate through the written word. Many of us are aware of the importance of nonverbal communication. Most would agree that how we dress gives a nonverbal cue to anyone who looks at us, and most recognize that body language, like crossing one's arms during an argument, sends out a clear signal. But do you stop and think about how what you type in an email or message will be received on the other end? Good question, and I think it also reminds me of the ambiguity of language. Language is interesting and a little bit mysterious. I think language is mysterious because it can be both precise and clear on some occasions, and in terms of conveying meaning, but it can also be vague and ambiguous in conveying something that the speaker or writer hadn't intended, let's say. So I think I need to mind, and I would invite you to consider this as well. I need to mind both what I say in terms of word choice and how frequently or how I say it. I guess some ideas to adhere to would be. So I hope you share with me a concern, a more deeper concern, I guess, about not only what we say to our online learners, but how we say it, and the importance of thinking about the culture of dialogue, building that, because it seems to me that that's a better way to go, because it invites students to participate in a trusted learning community in which they matter and they value to you as teacher, and by extension to their peers, which can have a big impact on their predisposition, I guess, to learning the content that we wish them to learn. So maybe just a couple of examples of things that I've been trying to do these last couple of years in the online context to share with you some of those ideas. So let me do that now. So here are some of the ways I try to promote that culture of dialogue and fraternal humanism. The first one is to answer quickly. We sort of mentioned that before, the 24-hour turnaround at the latest. But usually I try to get back to students if they are seeking help, especially clarification and so on, because I hope I'm being clear and so on in assignments, but sometimes it's clear as mud, and so that getting back to them quickly catches them while they're looking at it, and hopefully it will encourage them to commit time and effort. So answering quickly is something that I believe, and some teachers are uncomfortable with this, but I found that sharing my mobile phone number is a quick way. I think online learners especially are apt to use phones increasingly, and so I invite them to text me if they want a very quick answer, encouraging them to do two things. One, identify themselves, because I tend to delete texts after a week or two. So remind me who you are and what course you're asking about, and then I'll try and get back to you. And then an exhortation not to abuse texting and so on. So and also to give me a call if it's something that they need an answer for immediately. But some teachers are not comfortable with doing that, and I don't think it's right or wrong. I just think that it's a quick, immediate way of communicating with online learners. So consider that. There might be a school policy too, but I find that for AVLI courses, it helps. It helps get back to students very quickly. The other practice that I found resonates with my online students is to thank them I mentioned earlier in the reflection here about the two layers, the immediate concern of a communication, and then the kind of opportunity to convey a truth. And so I'll usually close email responses to individual students or small groups by thanking them for their time and effort in our class. Just acknowledging, I think, their contributions as unique. And I try to be specific, too. That was really a good forum post. I loved your response to the question prompt or something. Or, man, that research project that you and your partner did was outstanding, and I really value what you're doing. I think they pick up on that quickly, and I find myself saying it repeatedly to students. So I think there's a convincing factor in repetition. So the more times they hear that I value their time and effort, because I'm asking them to do that, to put time and effort into my course, and I acknowledge that is valuable. And then finally, I let students know, especially the ones that come in with a certain level of stress, especially during college application times, or retreat, if they're on retreats or something, and they're asking for how to finish these assignments while they're away. So oftentimes I'll share with them that I see that this is one heck of a week for you, and I want you to know that I'm praying for you as a retreat leader or whatever. I think sharing that idea that I think about them in a larger context than just academics. I mean, academics is the reason that we're together and so on in that online course, but it doesn't mean that I can't share with them the fact that I am very concerned with them and their families, and especially this last year, there were multiple opportunities to share with them that I was praying for them hard, for their families and their communities with the disruptions that were going on. So I think that's those are a couple of ways that you might consider as well in your online class. Finally, I want to end with one of the most inspiring quotes in that blog post that I shared earlier in the reflection here. But here it is. This is really a wonderful quote. So the quote is: "A school should be a framework of relationships that make up a living community of faith, which calls students to examine their call to serve the world. To be human means to be in communion, not separate and individualistic. Catholic schools are called to intentionally build communion and to instill in our students hope as opposed to a paradigm of indifference." So, guys, I want to thank you for making it to the end of this reflection on communicating with students online, the ambiguity, tone, and the construction of relationships in fraternal humanism. Thank you, God bless, and happy communicating.